Welcome to the Well Built Podcast. Chad Prinkey here with Matt Verderamo. Matt, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Chad. How you doing?
Excellent, buddy. And we have a great guest on today, a friend of a client and a fast friend of ours, Jon Veely. Jon, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks, Matt. Great to be here.
Yeah, you bet. So Jon Veely is the lead counsel and president of Veely Global Law Firm. We know him because he does excellent immigration law and I'm sure various other forms of law, but excellent immigration law work on behalf of contractor clients of ours. And Matt and I have been wanting to do a specific show about the current status of immigration law and the impacts in the construction industry. And the show today is going to be very practical advice for contractors who are trying to navigate a very challenging situation and one that's pretty fluid, kind of changing day to day, and the intensity levels are turning up and down depending on where you are in the country and that type of stuff at any point. So I look forward to passing along some very useful ideas. And I don't want to make the show about, philosophy or politics or any of those types of things. And I also feel like it just bears saying that on a very practical, realistic level, the construction industry is today, and frankly, always has been, highly dependent on an immigrant workforce to put work in place and keep up with the demands of the leading economy in the world. And so while I very much want to support efforts to clean up and make sure that things are done right in this country and all those types of things, I think one of the only logical outcome that we have to arrive at the end of the day with all of this effort is that we have to have a path for legal immigrant workers. There just simply are not enough American citizen workers to do this work. And so it's very practical in that, in this discussion. I think depending on where you are in the country and depending on the sector that you're building in, we could be relying on 80% immigrant workers, on a given job site, and sometimes as little as 5% or none, on a job site. But it's essential, and the work that you're doing, Jon, to help contractors and navigate it, I think, is also essential. So we're very, very happy to have you here.
Glad to be here.
All right, let's dive into some practical stuff. So I think the first thing that we want to understand is what is actually happening right now. At a high level, what is ICE actually doing now in the construction industry? What are you seeing and hearing from your clients, Jon?
Well, the construction industry is one of the targeted industries, always has been, because of exactly what you said, right? There's a better chance of finding people that are not authorized to work in the construction industry than, say, in an office. So it's easy to go out to a construction site, check on people there, and catch a bunch of fish, right? If you're a fisherman, if that's what you're trying to do, it's an easier thing to do. I think what's happening right now that is, you got to understand that immigration is a political football, right? It's easy political football because the immigrants can't vote. They're not voters. They may be related to voters, but they're an easy group to pick on. And if we pick on them, then it's an us versus them thing. And that's been going on for a very, very long time. I've been an attorney for 33 years. I've been through a lot of presidents. I've watched the ups and downs of this. I've looked at the potential solutions. I've been asked by congressmen, what are solutions? Honestly, they don't want those solutions for some reason. It's easier to get elected by saying, I'm going to be tough on crime and going after folks than solving a really complicated problem, which is there's a country to our south, or a number of countries to our south, with able-bodied workers, and we got a country with lots of jobs and too many jobs for the numbers of workers that we have. So they're coming for the jobs. That's it. I mean, there might be some bad people in there too, but instead of looking at getting rid of the bad people like we would in our own society, we want to get rid of all of them. And it's just not a good idea. I mean, we're we are propelling in a lot of different ways of really not having enough workers because our largest generation, the baby boomers, are aging out of jobs. And who are we replacing them with, right? So we're now going into our workforce, taking people out of the workforce and sending them away. And the people that are being harmed might be the people being sent away, but they're also the company owners here who might have their entire crew taken in a job that's due. So now they're breaching their contract, they're missing their timelines, and that isn't what anybody wanted, right? That's not it. And what we're seeing is this being done in a showtime, right? I mean, you see it. I've seen them a couple times now, just in life in Dallas, where when the folks are there, there's a lot of cars. It's a big thing, and the hauling of the people is a show, right? And it's meant to intimidate, and it's meant to do these other things. And that's what this particular president does. There was a little of that with George W. Bush, and then when Obama came in, he deported more people, but he didn't do it with as much show. Matter of fact, he gave more time. Like, hey, we're coming to get these folks. So no president, honestly, believe it or not, has been pro illegal immigration. None of them. Right? It just isn't true. That's what the politicians running against them say they are, but none of them. None of them are for that. None of them say that's a good idea. All of them want to deport them. All of them have deported them in very high numbers, right? What we have now is a political football that is doing that. Now, the problem is it's scaring people, right? And what do we do? And it's scaring employers. So the funny thing for me is I get phone calls from people who are otherwise fine about asking about all sorts of things. I have a green card. I want to go to France and come back in. Can I do that? I'm like, yes. Of course you can, but but I heard about this and this and this, and I'm like, well, okay, those are anecdotes. There's still tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands, I don't know the number of people flying into our country every day, and they're fine, and lots of people going to work every day, and they're fine. But we have these big shows, these big deportation shows, and we have these numbers, and because of the numbers, we're seeing a distinction in the amount of people being deported that are otherwise legal. Right. And that's an interesting thing to debate, illegality and legality. Right. I mean, are you an illegal because you're unauthorized? That's the term of art. It's immigrant's not the right word. Immigrant means you have a green card. Right. These aren't green card holders. These are people who have come to the United States without authorization, who are working on jobs, getting paid, probably not being paid legally to work in a job, but they have bosses and they turn up. And if they didn't, they'd be fired. Right. So we're not looking at the right solutions, but I'm not here to talk about that either, right? And we could talk about that all day. We're talking about what can we do, right? So I talked to lots of owners of construction companies like you guys' clients, and we look at plans, right? So unfortunately, there's visas that would otherwise work just fine, right? The H-2B visa, for example, is a visa that is where someone comes in and works for a temporary period of time and then leaves. Okay, makes sense, doesn't it? They vet them. They got to come in. There's somebody that's going to go through their paperwork. They're going to make sure that they're not criminals and all those sort of things. The problem with the H-2B visa is it's seasonal, right? Meaning that a construction worker in Maine or New England who has a winter that their construction company may have some time off can get this visa to come in during the months that you can do construction. Whereas Florida, Texas, California, they don't have any time off. They don't want time off. They wouldn't want to have a company that stopped at any time, right? Let's just keep building. So unfortunately, the same worker can be legal to work in New England or Minnesota or the northern climates, or maybe Arizona where it's too hot to build in the summer. They can only do it in the cooler months. But for a lot of our southern United States, the H-2B has become an unworkable visa, which is unfortunate, right? Because
we got the H-2B. This is a seasonal option. It's one route to go, but it doesn't work for, call it 25 states.
Yeah, lots of them. We're the most construction's going on, by the way. Because that's it's hot and you can build all the time. So it's unfortunate. If there's going to be a reform, it shouldn't be to make the H-2B harder. It should make the H-2B simpler, or to get rid of the seasonality of it, right? Make them good for a year at most and make them get them again. But the company should not have to be seasonal. That would be an easy fix. I've suggested that to congressmen. They're like, hey, John, that makes sense. We can't get anybody going for it because there's too many groups fighting amongst what they want. That's what happens in the politics. It's not, the practical solutions don't always work. But I've worked with some companies that are international in elements, right, where they have offices in Mexico, and they train people in Mexico, and then they can transfer them up on L1Bs. The L1 is for a multinational company, right? And you can have people that know the secret sauce. So we've done it with some highly trained people in certain elements of construction. I won't go into the details there, but you can use your imagination. We do this really, really well. To use one, like say we make ornate doors, or we have these staircases that are made in a certain way. And, we teach that. We teach it in Mexico, and we're going to bring these guys up to make staircases. Something like that, maybe. There's a bunch of things you could do on that, and we've done them. Canadians and Mexicans can come up on TNs as management consultants. Now, you got to do it the right way. A management consultant is not an employee. It doesn't work for the company to oversee other people. They consult to the management or the executives of the company, saying, we want to build these ornate staircases. We don't have anybody that knows how to do it. We're bringing this guy in to help us build these ornate staircases or whatever. Solar panels, it doesn't matter. So, you have this thing, and use the TN visa. TN stands for Treaty NAFTA. So Canadians and Mexicans can do that. They have to have 5 years of experience in this, but that's where you could get a management level person that's going to come in and help your project finish off. There is an H-2B that is for a one-time use. So if you have a project, you're building something out, and you want to bring these guys in to do this one project, you can do those for up to 3 years. So that's one that might be able to be helpful. That I think some folks are using probably in great numbers. Then there's the e-visa. So both Canada and Mexico have treaties with the United States in which we could go to those countries and open companies. They could come to our country and open a company. So someone can come to the United States, open a company for, say, $100,000 investment into their own company, hire people from their own country to come in there. And so there's ways that we've worked with companies to bring in a guy and a bunch of his workers, right, together to come handle something and start a company. And we've got some great, 33 years of doing this, some really great stories of people that have become very successful in their lives after starting off with, in this very limited way. And it's been good. So there's some ways to get visas to come up and do some of these things right now. And we've had success. And it's fun to look at, write it all out and see all the different ways these companies can work together and try to do that. You can merge and buy companies and bring up their workers if that works for you. And I think as immigration gets harder, people are going to need more creative solutions, legal creative solutions that work to handle the need of workers. They're just isn't going away. I mean,
yeah. I think one of the biggest challenges that I see with the typical contractor in the United States, I'll just call it typical contractor. They're really small businesses, man.
Yeah.
Like they don't talking about H-1Bs and L-1Bs, H-2Bs, TNs, like all this type of stuff. This is just way over their head. So is that why you exist? Is that they?
Yeah, that's why I exist. And, we offer strategy sessions for people to talk about that. I can't even count how many Canadians we've helped set up companies in the United States in the construction industry alone to come down there. There's not as much work in Canada. There just isn't, right? And they're good folks. They know what they're doing. Some of them are highly skilled. Some of them have done it for a very long time. And they come right in and bam, they nail it. And so, a Canadian bringing their company to the United States or starting a small company in the United States there's a clean pathway for that. And we've done a lot of that. That's different than filling your team with laborers, right? It's a different equation. But that's where we are.
So at the most basic level, what mistakes are contractors making? If you are one of those contractors that's listening to this and hearing all of these different options, just what is the most basic things that they should be looking for that they're probably creating risks right now?
Well, look, most people don't know the workers coming to them are legal or not, and they can't ask a lot of questions about it, right? They'll get sued, and there's less questions you can ask about someone's nationality than a bouncer can ask a kid trying to sneak into a bar, right? I mean, it's just true. So you can't ask them more questions than you would ask an American, and so that's kind of been the wink nod way that people have gotten away with this, is that guy shows me a green card and it looks like a green card, it's a green card, and I'm going to fill out my I-9 and it's on them, and that's fine. The minute I start asking them, is this real? Well, one, I violated their privacy rights, and there's attorneys that would sue you. You shouldn't do that. And I've met my alarm system.
That's why they have editing. It's all good, John.
The
good. Let's give it a minute.
The doing the I-9 is what that's all about, right? So filling out an I-9, someone presents you with a green card or a social security card and a driver's license, and then you just have to take it at face, unless it's obviously wrong. Now, I've worked with companies, this goes back to George W. Bush, where we're all at an immigration conference. There's an annual one. The Bush administration sent out 1,000 letters to employers saying, we're coming in the next 3 days to inspect your I-9s. It was just a big gotcha. Well, at least they gave them 3 days. But all the immigration attorneys in America were at one conference, and we all left. I flew out to San Francisco, sat down with these folks, and worked with ICE, and we actually got a great solution because my client didn't know, but a large number of those workers had faked their green cards. We went in, did our own audit first. We said, give us 2 weeks. We'll go through the audit and we'll tell you what we find. So I went through and I found 6 out of probably 200 people. One of them had a green card that instead of having the word January had the word Enero, which is the Spanish word for January, and American green cards are in English. So there's a way to handle that, right? You don't just fire them. You actually have to say, look, we did an audit, and this has come up, and this is questionable. Can you go get this fixed? Go check with your immigration attorneys or whatever, and tell us. And 9 out of 10 times they're just going to disappear, which is exactly what it did. So our employer didn't fire someone illegally. They just asked them the question that was unanswerable, and it sorted itself. But there's ways to do that, and there's definitely ways not to do that. Other things where it's kind of sad is we're like, hey, I've got these illegal people working. Can you get them visas? Like, if you know they're illegal, then you have knowledge, right? So this whole concept of knowledge and constructive. Knowledge is the guy comes up and says, hey, I'm illegal, can I have a job? If you hire him, you've now knowingly hired somebody who's unauthorized.
Right.
There's a thing called constructive knowledge, and this is where it gets more complicated. That's where a person comes up, tells you their name's Juan Valdez. I'm using the Colombian coffee name. I don't know any Juan Valdez's, but Juan Valdez comes up, gives you his ID, and then Social Security sends back what's called a no match letter, saying there's another Juan Valdez with a different Social Security number out there. This is what's called a no match letter. So that's when you would sit down with Juan and you'd say, Juan, we got this no match letter. Why don't you go to Social Security? We'll give you 30 days to go sort this out. And then if you haven't, come back to us and we'll probably give you more time. And that way you're handling it. And if I can say 2 words that what you want to have as a company is you want to have a culture of compliance, right? Culture of compliance. So you want to be doing the right things, right? So when these things come up, and they do from time to time, you don't freak out. You just handle them well. But you want to have an attorney give you advice on how to do that, because a lot of it isn't organically the right thing, right? And so the people have said, hey, can you help get my people visas? I'm like, the fact that you had that conversation with them is wrong and probably illegal for you to have done it. Now you have knowledge, right? So you can't keep hiring them. With ICE, for us back in the day, they gave us 6 months to part ways with our best leaders in the company and hire new people. And it was gut wrenching for everybody because these guys had worked there for a long time, and it was very sad. But they were nice to us. Now that was a different era. Right now we're seeing, and it's anecdotal, right? But we're seeing a much more negative, violent, tough on people, and it's not just tough on the the foreign nationals. It's tough on the American employers. And what I'm seeing out there is findings of fraud, which really gets under my craw because they're using the word fraud, which is a criminal term, right? Like if we committed fraud, we would go to jail. But if we were to go to jail and we're committing fraud, we'd have a chance to have an attorney, we'd have due process, and a jury would have to, or we'd have a right to have a jury find us guilty of fraud. The USCIS officials and ICE officials, and there's a fraud detection unit as well. So there's kind of a number of agencies mixed together. They're sending out investigators that are going by a place and making these findings of fraud. And then they're just putting it in the file. So then when you file for a visa, they're like, oh, well, you committed fraud. It's like, I didn't have a chance to defend myself. There's answers to this. You just said it was fraud and you're using the term like it's a crime, and it's not a crime, right? It's something regulatory, right? And that kind of breaks to the whole thing about the word illegal that is really interesting from a lawyer's perspective, right? So from a lawyer's perspective, there is natural law, which is murder, rape, really tough things. Like that's always illegal. Even if, the Nazis come in and they kill people, those people will be found guilty later if it's made legal under that. That's natural law. Those things are always wrong and always illegal unless there's something like it's a war or
they broke into
something like that.
Or whatever.
Exceptions, right? That's natural law. What we're dealing with immigration is regulatory law. That's like a speed limit. It's something that could be illegal one day and not legal the other. It could be 55 miles an hour one day. It could be 75 miles an hour the other. It could be I got an H-2B because it's seasonal, or I didn't get an H-2B because it wasn't seasonal, right? These are not inherently wrong people. You see what I'm saying? They're not natural violators of laws. They are missing something. They could have overstayed a visa. They could have overstayed a visa because of their mistake. They could have overstayed a visa because of their attorney's mistake. But these people are not committing crimes in the way we think of crimes, and that's the natural crimes, right? These are regulatory violations that are in that stuff. And when I'm seeing these regulators make determinations saying that something's, or treating it like it's a crime when it's not a crime, it has these impact on these employers and these employees in a way nobody really thinks they should. And they're sort of just doing it. And this is where they're overstepping, right? Their boundaries within the scope. And when you sue the United States, you got to sue an official, right? You name them personally for that official, and there's a way to do that. But then you would sue them under the Agency Procedures Act because they're arbitrary and capricious. They're acting outside the scope of their duties, right? So they can only go this far, but they've gone this far, right? That's how lawyers sue agencies, and they do it every day for all sorts of reasons, whether it's the SEC or the IRS or USCIS, right? So we're dealing with overstepping right now, and it is scaring people because it's kind of done in this gotcha on television sort of way, which it really doesn't need to be if we're just trying to solve a problem. But I'm not sure why we're doing it this way, but it's got everybody, well, I shouldn't say everybody scared. It's got a lot of people scared and worried on what they need to do to stay compliant. So, that's why we're here, and we try to help the best we can.
Wow. Lots there.
Yeah.
There just is. You talk a little bit about if I can present to you what I believe I am hearing you say, and certainly also what I believe I've seen anecdotally over the years, is that the way things have worked is the employer isn't supposed to ask. The employee provides the documents. The employer takes whatever documents, they input them into the system, and that's it. They do an I-9. They cover their base, and it's not their job to inspect whether a person is a citizen.
I kind of feel like I got to correct that a little bit. The employer has a duty to ask specific questions, right? How are you, an I-9 is a thing that has a list of documents to show that you're authorized to work, right? They have to do that within the first 3 days. So the employers are deputized to enforce the legal working. They are. So it's not like they're not supposed to ask. They're supposed to ask, right? They absolutely have to ask within 3 years or 3 days, or they're open for fines, right? So when they ask for these documents, which of the list, right? Which could be a green card, which could be a passport, which could be a driver's license, social security number. Okay, that's all they can ask for. They can't hone in and ask more, right? That's to keep them from violating these people's rights farther, but that's what their rights are. So if someone gives them what appears to be a green card, right, or a social security card, that's all they can do is look at it and say, well, this appears to be it. Now their duty is over. If they go farther, where they're trying to be nice, like I need to find out if you're not legal, so I got my immigration attorney is going to help you. They don't do that. That violates their civil rights to not be treated any different than an American would, right? Because an American, we walk in, what do you got? You got your driver's license, your social security number, whatever, right? We just give them that. So it's really precise, but that's where, most employers are saved is any of this thing that's done wrong has been done by the employee to go out and get themselves something fake, I guess, right? And they can't tell the difference because these guys, they're good, right? I mean, they look like what they're supposed to be. So that's, I think, the better way to say it. This isn't a wink and a nod how to get away with it. It's really the protection of civil rights on, we can only ask you these questions, and then if it's good, we're good, right?
Yes. And so some employers I have met over the years, some contractors have just not understood where their risk sort of ended and where their responsibility ended and things along those lines.
Yeah.
And have actually just found it more expedient to use a subcontracted workforce altogether.
Right.
And 1099 to a different contractor who has a workforce. And now I'm even another layer removed, right? From, I'm just hiring a company, right? The company has their own people, and those people, I'm assuming, are, legal to work and all those things. So I will, they're authorized to work. So I will assume that that's the case, but I'll subcontract it. And that has, I think that world is fairly loaded with further 1099ing.
Yeah, that's where the investigations are happening, right?
Right.
So the investigators are coming out and they're asking everybody, what do they know and what do these guys know and stuff like that. And that's where they're trying to find out, is the big company, just turning a blind eye, letting this happen, knowing it's happened, right? I mean, are they finding email communications, text, whatever they may do to find out that these people actually do know stuff? When I first became a lawyer 30 years ago, there was a very, very large company that was doing that in the meat production industry and got something like an $11 million fine for doing that exact same thing, just using contractors and saying we're not responsible. And they learned of that they knew, right, that it was they created this thing, right, and that's the deal, and that's where immigration has gone, and even though that was 30 years ago, we're just seeing more money being paid by the government to try to find those things out, right? So there's more investigators in the enforcement of this regulatory agency is up. Like, I mean, they got more money than they've ever had, and so they're going to put it to use. They're going to hire people to do it, and they're going to go out and they're going to look at the construction industry because that's an easy target for them, right? And so we gotta make sure that we have cultures of compliance, understand how to deal with it, and do everything in the best way you can do it. I think what folks know is like learn this stuff. Get somebody that you work with that can tell you the different ways you can utilize American laws for immigration to bring in foreign workers in the right way. That's what I've done with companies, and we've had great deals of success with it. And they've gone out, competed, and outbid or won contracts over those that just were sloppy and were using unauthorized workers because everybody knew they were, right? So they didn't. Whoever wanted to do the contract didn't want that risk. What if your entire crew goes away, right? I know these guys are spending extra money and getting it done right, and
Yeah. Well, it's often the worst kept secret, in at least the construction industry, and I can imagine in hospitality and agriculture and so on and so on. Right?
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Right. So I'd like to shift with the time we have remaining. I'd like to shift to practical solutions to the big picture. So I think the savvy listener should be pulling away from the conversation we've had up to this point, kind of how to appropriately navigate both hiring legally and understanding your risk and exposure. When it comes to that hiring process, what you're required to do, what you're not required to do, ensuring that you don't knowingly do anything wrong, right? Those types of things. So I think all that's extremely useful. Can't help it. Want to talk about like the long game solutions that you're talking to Congress people about,
right.
And fundamentally, how do we get the workers we need in practical ways and make sure that those people are here and paying taxes and
we got to change the language. Calling people illegals isn't helpful. It just isn't. I mean, these are people. I mean, looking at these people as people, that's an important thing to do as an employer, because you think of them when they're your employees or contractors as people, right? I mean, they're people. And what we have a problem of doing is we like individual people. We like the guy that has the taco truck and the restaurant where the guy comes out and he's real friendly to us and all that kind of stuff. And then we look at, everybody else as this big group of, bad folks, right? Which isn't true. It just isn't. And we got to change our language. We got to look at the positives and the needs, right? So even if we're just selfish, which I hope we're not, but even if we're just selfish, we need to have people to fulfill the jobs we have, and we don't have enough people to do it. It's that simple. Immigration should be something that we're working on to bring in the right people. Our systems vet, they do. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't some people that get here and commit crimes. I know that happens. They should be put in the system just like anybody else with, and justice should be done to them. But to not let the rest of them in because any of them or some of them or one of them, and I think the percentage are fairly low, do these things is just cutting our nose off to spite our face, right? That isn't the solution. And so I think what it'll take is going through this thing that we're going through right now for people to get on their side and say, well, that was exhausting. That didn't solve the problem. Why don't we sit down and solve the problem? Because there are things that can be done. It's so regulated, right? These laws work inconsistently. Like I said, why is an H-2B seasonal? That doesn't make any sense. Why can't we create a visa for the construction industry, right? That just says construction workers can come in. This is what they need to do. There's all sorts of solutions that could happen, that could be passed if people wanted to really solve it. The problem is it's easier to kill something in Congress than it is to get it passed, and that's the reality. And there's enemies in both parties to immigration, right? That's just the reality of the whole deal. And that's why when you elect one, you don't solve it, or when you elect the other, you don't solve it, right? It just, it's crazy how that it's too easy to run on anti-immigration and win because people would rather look at that than solving their own problems. And so that's the long game. But there are solutions that could happen, and I'm hopeful that if we do this really, if we are having a very anti-immigration movement right now, that's going to end at some time. And we're a pendulum in America. We go like this, right? So when it goes back, maybe we'll find a way to make this work. And if we just don't have enough workers, we're going to have to do that. What's our other option?
So if one of the practical solutions is construction visas,
mm-hmm.
what else would you recommend in terms of, things that we can actually do to get the people we need in here to do the work and to do so in an authorized way?
So there are H-2Bs that will work in some instances, seasonal if they're in environments that the company itself is seasonal, right? Not the project. Then there are one-time projects, right? That, and those can last up to 3 years. Like, hey, I'm building this. I need workers for that. Okay, that's the H-2B can work for that. The TN can work for some management consultants for Canadians and Mexicans. The E2 for 33 countries are people that can come into the United States and open a company and bring people from their country to work on it, right? So the Mexican guy comes in, brings a bunch of workers, and they go out and they're a contractor to your contractors and say they do whatever you want to do. The L1 are for companies that have offices in the U.S. and another country where they're moving people between it, and they can be executives and they can be specialized workers as well, so that you could have some specialty jobs there under the L1B, executives under the L1A. Not a bad idea to do a merger on that. If you want to buy a company that has a bunch of employees, then that would give the company owner a clean path for a visa and a green card. Actually, a lot of these lead to green cards. There's just some ways to do that, and there's those are some just off the top of off the top. But I'll glad to talk to any of your listeners. We often charge for our strategies, but I do free strategies for anybody who wants to talk about their situation, and we can talk about that. And I think there's two buckets. One is how do we get visas, and the other is what do we do if we're investigated? What's our plan, right? And having a plan is important. Talking to your employees that if you're investigated, here's what you do, and talking to your company and the people there. What do you do in the front office when ICE walks in, right? There's stuff you can do, and we're kind of here to be dispatched, bat line when that happens. And we've got a team of attorneys in our team and others that team up to handle those solutions. We've got people at the border. We've got people that are specialized in removal. We've got we do a lot of business immigration and all those sort of things. So we sort of ramped up when we saw it happening, and unfortunately have had to be called in a few times on these situations. You might imagine.
Well, and maybe you can give us a free hit, Jon. Like, what should that conversation sound like with your company for your plan for investigations?
Yeah, so I'd put together a team. Like, who needs to know, right? Like, does the CEO need to know? Depends on really how big it is, right? I mean, who's at the front desk? Is there a bunch of people at the front desk, or is it managers out on the site? What do you do? Who do you call? And what's the first thing you say? And how do you interact with the ICE official, right? There's different ways to do that. You could say, I don't want to talk to you. I have an attorney. You could also say, I'm glad to be friendly with you. Let me have your card. I'll have them get back to you. The FDNS, that's the fraud detection unit. They're pretty cool with that, but we've seen ICE, just coming in and grabbing people, right? And they're not stopping for anybody, right? So you don't always have a choice, and you don't want to see anybody get shot or detained or thrown in jail. When they could just say, okay, I'll get my lawyer and we'll deal with this best we can. With people that are just being taken, that's new. We don't really see as much of that in the past. But I have friends in criminal courts, in our Dallas office. We've got criminal guys, and they're like, people are just getting grabbed out of the courthouses. They're gone, right? There's no time to call an attorney. They're just out of the country. I don't know that happens all the time, but we've had people who've been picked up, and we called, and they were where they said they were going to be, and we went through the process with them. Sometimes there's answers, sometimes there's not. Depends, right? So if it's an unauthorized worker, there's not usually a lot we can do, but we've got a scenario now where we're going to try to get the guy out on bond so that he can sell things and then leave on his own without having to be thrown away with a house, the door locked, in another country, right? I mean, there's all sorts of things that can happen. And sometimes they're solvable. I mostly focus on the visa side. We've 99% approval rating. Where the removal people, they don't win a lot, right? And so we have specialized guys that just deal with that. We got a guy that used to be at USCIS, and he's brilliant. If he sees them doing it the way they're not supposed to do it, he knows, and that's where that can happen sometimes. You can defend either on the facts or on the law, and if officers didn't follow the law, then you pick that apart, right? So we got guys on our team.
Wow. Matt, anything else from your perspective?
No, this has been great.
Yeah, super valuable, Jon. I know this is an insanely busy time for you, so I really appreciate you peeling out this time for our audience. Very, very good of you to do. I wonder if I can finish by running a pet theory by you for your feedback.
Okay, sure. Shoot.
So this is anybody who knows me will also tell you that I'm a hardcore optimist, can't help myself. I have this theory that a lot of the showiness of this experience is designed to placate a fringe element on the right that really wants to see this done in an aggressive way. It also happens to maybe have the positive side effect of scaring the hell out of people who are thinking about coming here. And that helps the new immigration numbers, the new illegal passing numbers, right? Like kind of thing. So winning on two fronts there, but that Trump knows who's taking care of his properties and who builds his buildings and who, right? Like those types of things.
For sure. He's been a big utilizer of immigration. For sure.
Totally. And that I don't view him as a particularly ideological man.
Right.
I have this hope that sometime in the next several months, hopefully not years, he will officially announce, and we got the last bad one. And now we're going to
did what we were supposed to do. Delivered my promise. Yeah,
we did it. Right, we did it. And now everyone who's here is now going to be here on a guest worker program, or everyone who's here is going to get an ID and they're going to go into the system, and we're going to watch closely and make sure that they're contributing members of society or something like that. Do you think I'm on drugs, Jon?
No, and I like the optimism. It's needed. I had brown hair when the last amnesty went through, and it was wonderful. And I remember this attorney had what did he have? 100 boxes that he was delivering on the last day of amnesty. And my little brother, may have still been in law school at the time, we're like, that's probably $1 million of legal fees that guy has, right, in those boxes, if he charge X amount for each of those things. And it was a good thing, and it cleaned it up, and it was a Republican idea, right? Both Reagan and Bush were pro-immigration because they came from states with lots of immigrants, right? Texas and California, and it wasn't always this way. And immigration has just been an issue on the right, but actions have results, and I'm not sure where people on it. Obviously, I'm in the middle of it, right? So I've got my opinions and things like that, but I'm not sure what people are thinking when they're seeing what's going on with American citizens being dragged in when they're protesting this. But I can't believe that everybody's happy about that. Like, that's not like they're going, yeehaw, this is right. I know some are, but I think that at the end of the day, do we want that much chaos? Do we want that much violence? For a person that just overstayed a visa? I mean, can't we get them in a simpler way? Do we really have to get rid of everybody? Are all the lines the same? Those are the discussions that I think can come out. And I think you're right. There has to be a show to it, and there has to be an ending, and there has to be a we won, and then we can talk about it. And I'd be fine with that. I mean, I just want to help my clients get there, and if they can't get there, I don't even help them, right? I mean, that's the end of the day. Is that there's a lot of people I have to turn down. We don't do everybody's case, but there's a lot of people that you to otherwise do. It's a different time right now. It's more inconsistent, and it's more negative, and it's the net of trying to find those who are violent criminals that we need to get out of our country is extending out to just people or foreign nationals, from all countries and all things. And most people don't think those folks should be rounded up and sent away. I don't think so. So I'm an optimist too. And Chad, I'd love to see that happen. Sooner the better.
Yeah. Well, it as you mentioned, it's a pendulum, right? And this is a really fast swing,
yes.
That we're seeing right now. And so perhaps we can get it all the way to the other side and get something, or at least in the middle. Let's get in the middle.
Back in the middle. Let's find out. Let's make some sense. A reasonable regulatory solution to handle the need for workers in our country. Let's start there. We have a need for workers in our country. The construction industry has a need for workers.
And balance that.
If these are able-bodied people that are worthy of hiring, that you think you would like to hire, and they're not, criminals that you'd be afraid of having with your other coworkers or your family members, let's have those people be okay. I mean, that's not that much to ask, honestly. And I think there's a way to make the law meet that. And I just don't think we're there yet. Obviously, I think there needs to be some more bloodletting, it seems. But I'm ready for it to be. So we'll keep doing what we do, and we're here to help. And anybody that wants has a situation they want to bounce off me, I'm glad to talk to any of your listeners.
So Jon Veely, thank you again for joining us. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Sure. So my name's down at the bottom of this, Jon Veely. My email is john@veelylaw.com. So it's my first name at VELIELAW.com, and John is John without an H, JON. Our phone number is 405-310-4333. If you want to go to our website, we have two of them. One is onlinevisas.com. That's an immigration-centric one. And the other one is veelylaw.com. That's for our full-service law firm with multiple bodies of law. But we do all of it, and love to help you if you need.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate you again for joining, Jon.
Yeah, thank you, Jon.
Wonderful day. Get some rest and get back after it.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks, Matt. Take care, guys.
Thank you.